Acknowledge you have the problem.
Well, that is good advice. All right, John, take the opposite of that. Give me some bad advice on how to manage third-party risk.
Only look at companies that have the word third in their name.
Ooh, that will limit you greatly. All right, can you one-up that, Steve? Give me worse advice on dealing with third-party risk.
Bury your head in the sand and don't acknowledge it exists.
All right, so at least he's covering the third there. Good job.
Get ready. It's Super Cyber Friday.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to today's Super Cyber Friday. It is the last Super Cyber Friday of 2022, so thank you so much for joining us. Our topic is hacking non-traditional cyber risk, an hour of critical thinking about how your third-party risk affects your business. It is third-party risk is what we're really talking about. Our guests, the two gentlemen I was just chatting with, Jonathan Arrett, who's the VP of Strategy and Risk for Risk Recon. They are a MasterCard company. And Steve Saluski, who is the co-host of Defense in Depth. You hear him all the time on the show. Our sponsor today is a Venn diagram. This is what I was thinking when I saw this. Like, where does the word MasterCard? You guys used to have the word MasterCard in there, and it's no longer in there. It is MasterCard. Everyone knows that. It's a Venn diagram. So, all right. 7 different ways to participate with us. You guys all know it. I'm guessing all regulars. Interested to know, pipe up in the chat room. If this is your very first Super Cyber Friday, you have never been here before, because we're excited that you're here as well. Please let us know it's your first one. These are all the different ways you can participate. Just remember, our bad idea today is how not to manage third-party risk. And our good tip is third-party risk management tips. So 10% better for that. That's how you'll label it. And bad idea, you will label bad idea. All right. First one for Brian Tate. Brian, thank you so much for joining us. All right. Make sure you ask questions. The button at the bottom of the screen to ask a question. Last time we did this on insurance, we had tons of questions. So we're hoping for tons of questions for you on the topic of third-party risk. All right, today's schedule, you saw good advice, bad advice, worse advice, how not to manage third-party risk, label it bad idea, third-party risk management tips, 10%, label it that way. We will play the public interest as we normally do. Then we'll vote for how not to manage third-party risk. And we've got a brand new game, never played before, called Fantasy CISO. You'll see how it's played. It's going to be fun. Or we hope it is. We're going to find out. Vote for your favorite third-party management tip, and we'll play Department of Yes, last question, final advice. And then we have our meetup, especially to those of you who are brand new here. Brian, for example, please join us in our meetup at the end of the show. You'll see the link at the bottom of the screen will take you there. But for right now, the link at the bottom of the screen will register you for our next Super Cyber Friday, which is, get ready for this, not going to be for an entire month. I'm sorry about that. Our topic is hacking automated security. But remember, if you register early, you're automatically entered in a raffle to win a CISO Series jacket. And guess what? Who won this week is Lisa Ackerman. She's the Deputy CISO over at GSK. Congrats to Lisa. All right. With that being said, let's get to our discussion in hand, and that is the discussion of non-traditional cyber risk. And we're calling it this way. And I'm going to throw it to you first, Jonathan, because I want you to define what the heck we're talking about. We consider direct risk the stuff that our company deals with directly. What are we talking about when we're talking about non-traditional cyber risk? Because it is third-party risk, but we want to sort of frame it in this way. Explain.
Yeah, David, it's the third party risk. It's fourth party risk. I kind of look at really more of like a systemic risk, right? What's the things that could happen that affect my organization from a cyber standpoint that maybe aren't directly the things that I think about. In third party risk, we always really just cared about who had my data, but I think we're talking about a much bigger picture. Who has my data? Maybe on a fourth party, or let's say somebody produces a widget for me, right? And maybe that widget has another widget that could put into it, and if that fourth party, fifth party has an issue, how does that affect the rest of my supply chain? Maybe they don't have any of my data, but maybe they have, if they have a ransomware event, they can't suddenly work. They can't produce my widget. So suddenly I'm losing a lot of money. And things like SolarWinds are stuff that is non-traditional risk that we never really thought about before either. And those sorts of things all kind of fit into this picture of basically what are all the things that can go wrong in my supply chain that really make my business have a really bad day.
That's the line to sum it all up. And it's funny,
Yeah.
we interviewed the CISO of Lexmark, and they build hardware that has lots of parts in it, and they have to worry about the security issues of everything that goes in there. So they are I think their primary risk is obsessing over their supply chain all the time. And Steve, you were telling me earlier that when you were over at Levi's, worrying about, because where your jeans were manufactured, worrying about all these different risk issues of things that were happening in other countries that you didn't have eyes on was a constant issue. Yes?
Yes. I'll give you a simple example of this fourth party risk, right? Which is our supply chain, 60% of our supply chain was transoceanic. And when Maersk got hit and they went offline, we lost visibility into 60% of our product shipping. So we didn't know where it was or when it was going to arrive. And for a company that sells jeans, not knowing where your jeans are, that as a cybersecurity risk in having to disconnect that supply chain and know when to put it back created a lot of angst.
Now, Brian called, I see, his bad idea is simply acquire all your vendors, then there's not any third-party risk, of which I believe we did a show on third-party risk. Someone came up with it. But by the way, not a horrible idea. Not a horrible idea. But we'll see how that one plays out. By the way, there's been a lot of talk about ChatGPT, is it GPT? It's GPT, actually, not GTP, GPT, coming up. We'll see how much they play in today's best bad idea. So we've set the framework and how complicated this get. From my first understanding of this, Jonathan, and I want to, this is my hope with today's episode, is we break this down into sort of more smaller bite-sized segments, the classic line of how do you eat an elephant, one bite at a time.
Yep.
So when you think about this concept, it just seems so overwhelming. How the friggin' hell do I deal with it? So what is the one bite at a time approach to dealing with this?
Yeah, I think the first bite obviously is to actually have some program in place to assess third parties and that sort of stuff, right? If you're not doing that, the rest of the conversation, start here and then we'll go from there. I think that's the most basic thing. And then from there, you have to get creative. It's like I said before, it's not just about confidentiality, which is what in security, we tend to really focus on confidentiality quite a bit. So if you've got the confidentiality piece down pat, from there start to think about resilience, which to me, I think resilience, the availability portion of the triad, that's the emerging piece that's getting huge in the market now. It's not just about, hey, your data's been breached. It's about like to Steve's point, jeans being impacted by a cyber issue isn't really a cyber issue if just some jeans are stuck in a shipping warehouse somewhere, right? Mm-hmm. But to Levi Strauss, it was a huge issue. So it's thinking along those lines and start to think outside the box and where really can we provide some more value as cyber professionals to our business, because it's not just about a data breach. It might be, but it's not just the breach. Hearing what you're saying, Jonathan, and I'll throw this to you, Steve. I go, is part of your job as a cyber professional to be the creative thinker of to play essentially what's worse games of, let's think of all the horrible scenarios that could possibly happen here that nobody is thinking about. I mean, did you guys spend a considerable amount of time thinking of what's worse scenarios?
So you can do that. And it's a great drinking game. Okay? Because the more you drink, the more out of the box you get. But then you have to sober up, right? And here's the challenge is just because I know I have the problem does not mean I have to solve it, right? Okay. The real challenge is don't go in knowing you have third party and fourth party risk, and therefore it's my job to fix it. You kind of have to start with, as a CISO, going, that's yet another challenge that's on my plate, along with all the other, right, attack surfaces that I have to manage. So let's start with a simple conversation of how important is it, and how many resources do I have to do something about that? Because you may simply say, we're just going to accept it because I have bigger fish to fry, or I just don't have enough resources. So let's start with that as I'm going to accept it all, and then slowly start to walk in with your leadership team to understand what it means to your business or to your consumer data against all the other threats. and have that logical conversation of people, process, and technology. So that's both good advice and bad advice, because many people are afraid to do it. Yet the good advice is, why don't you pick your battles rather than just assuming you own the war?
And Steve, if I can chime in there, David. Steve, that's one of the questions I get an awful lot from CISOs. Like, why should I care? Like, I've secured my kingdom. I've built this huge fortress around my data, my IP, my systems. Why should I care? The dirty secret is, we take that same data and we share it with the guy down the street who, runs his business out of a 74 El Camino, right? So if at the end of the day, it comes back to that, if that guy's breached, my customer doesn't care that it was the guy that ran the business out of the 74 El Camino. He cares that it was my company that shared the data with them. And that's, you're kind of guilt by association. So I agree. Like, if you have to make a decision, sometimes you have to accept it. But if you don't do that second half that you mentioned, like that, okay, we've accepted it, but now we need to address it, right? We can't just leave well enough alone.
All right. We're going to be trashing El Camino salesmen for today's episode.
That's good. So let me talk about this, right? Which was, again, the indirect risk. Third-party risk is the hot topic. What am I doing about third-party? About the direct integrations that I have with my, I'm going to call it, in-house data center with all the other applications I'm integrating to. Let's say it's SaaS. Okay, that's the hot topic. Risk recon, many ways that we can measure that risk. But I got to be honest, if you look at it deeply, it's the fourth-party risk. It's what are my SaaS providers using in their infrastructure and their security controls that I have no way of measuring, and actually are the deeper risk, because those are the ones that often take a lot more chances because they may be regional suppliers. And now we're getting back to somebody who bought the deal in, pick your company, Germany, who's two guys in a garage, so to speak, and they have promised me, right, through my third party, that they're doing everything my security controls require that I've committed to as a result of legal and regulatory compliance. So the real challenge is, how do I get visibility into the fourth level of risk, right? Not third party, but fourth party, the indirect.
Let me ask this question that just came in from Dwayne Graham, who leads to just this issue. Dwayne says, I see a lot of vendor questionnaires that ask 100+ questions. We know all this. So, and I think I get this sense that we should have a kind of a tiered level of questions, because Dwayne says, what can we do to ask fewer questions that matter more? Any suggestions? And I'm going to throw this to both of you. What are the 3 questions we should ask every vendor? Because my feeling is, if they don't answer these 3 questions right, I don't need to ask the next 97+. You know what I mean?
I'll give you my favorite.
Okay.
Do you have a named person in charge of security?
Which is part of a lot of regulations too, I should throw out.
But not every company and not every vendor is regulated, right? So that can give you an awful lot right there. Do you actually have somebody that has security in a title, or at least in a responsibility? If they say no, then the rest of the stuff is probably filled out by a sales guy.
Okay, give me question number 2, Steve.
Oh, question number 2 is, I would actually go to my legal team and I would say, what do we write into the contract so that in the event that we have an outage, we're covered?
Okay. All right. Now, I just want to share one quick thing here, just so everyone can see.
That was the wrong answer is what you're telling me. Okay.
No. I just want to point out that here's the 74 El Camino. And I don't know of anyone who's actually run a business out of one of these before.
It does have a flatbed in the back, so it's
it does have a flatbed in
cool.
the back. You're right.
And it's mobile, so
there you go. It is mobile, so that is an attractive quality of the 74 El Camino. No, it's good. Give me the last one here, and then we're going to go to our first game. John Ehret, what's the third question we're going to ask? And this is going to be the qualifier.
I probably want to know if they had cyber insurance. That's another thing to see if they're even thinking about things.
Okay, that's a good point.
Okay, I want a fourth one then, which was, I want to know if they can commit to telling me about a cyber event within 24 hours of possible identification.
That is a good one.
Which was, how quickly are they willing to tell me that there's a problem so that I can start to do something about it?
All right. Let's play our next game.
Do you know what others are thinking? On the public interest.
All right. Our fans know how this is played. Now, we have often played this in connection with a game called That Totally Sucks, but we have this new game today called Fantasy CISO. So, depending on how many you get right on this, will depend on how many you get to choose from our Fantasy CISO game. So, get ready, everybody. Play along. First question is, most average monthly search queries, third-party risk or my risk? What gets more queries? Remember, this is everyone, not just internet people. Everyone. So it could be third-party risk, could be my risk. Who knows? I don't even remember the answer here. What do you think, guys? Jonathan?
I'd like to think it's A, but I'm going to go with B.
Okay. Going with B. By the way, I'm telling my two hosts, refresh the back channel, by the way, just because it locked up on it. Oh, say B, my risk for you. Steve, what do you say?
Well, I have to go with A just to be contrarian.
Okay. Well,
Since
one
it
of
was
you is going to
everybody,
be
I'm
right.
going B.
And the correct answer is my risk. All right. 1 for John, 0 for Steve. All right. That's good. All right. Next one is, what gets more search queries, cyber risk or political risk? What do you think?
I'm going to go with C.
Cyber risk and
Yeah.
Steve?
I'm going with D.
Going with D. All
Steve's
right.
going
Splitting
completely
again.
contrary and everything.
Somebody's going to be right. And it is Steve. All right. Good job, Steve. Almost 2-1. That was a surprise to me. I thought it was cyber risk as well, but political risk won. So right now we're 1-1 for both of you. Next one. Should I be worried or should I be scared? What got more queries?
E.
E? Steve?
I'm going to go with F.
Splitting again.
I'm
Again, one of
splitting
you is
He's
going to be
hedging his
right.
bets.
Correct answer is E by 3-1 margin. Look at that. All right, 2 for John, 1 for Steve. Let's see what you can do on the last one. Here we go. Environmental risk, social risk, governance risk, the ESG triumvirate. Which one gets most queries?
G.
G, what do you think, Steve?
I'm going to go with H.
H, and you're all wrong. I was surprised by that.
I had G.
Environment.
No, he had G. He
I had
got
G.
it right. He
You
had
had G. I'm sorry. I thought
I
you said
did.
G for governance risk. Sorry. Then 3.
That's
You got 3 correct. You only got 1 right. Oh my
That's
God,
right.
not good for you.
I know.
Steve.
I know. But
All
I
right,
want my
so-
sponsor to be happy, okay? So this is how I'm going to do it. I was like, see?
All right, so you know, so because you got 3 right and you only got 1 right, you each get 1 choice when we play in just a moment the game. That's a free. So, but you got 1 right, so you're going to get 2, Steve, and John, you get 4. You will see. You're going to want 4 versus only 2. All right, Matt is ashamed of his performance. I'm ashamed of the search results, said Russ. All right.
There
All
you
right,
go.
let's move this on. All right, we got another question here from Augustin. Let's Augustin. This one's not relevant to what we're talking. We're talking about cybersecurity tool. That's not. We're not going to get into that right now. All right, next question, and please let me know if you've refreshed your the back channel too. Let's go into more questions. More questions, everybody. Please submit more questions for us. All right. Okay, we mentioned ESG at the end here. Environmental, social, and government risk. Just overview, John, what are we talking about when we talk about ESG?
ESG is tough for me. ESG is kind of those intangible things because it's subjective to what your company cares about, right? It's you know, do you want to do business with people that are strip miners? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. Do you want to do business with companies that sell to North Korea? Maybe you do, maybe you don't, right? From a cyber perspective, you know, to get rid of all the other stuff, to get rid of any potential political bias or anything along those lines. Why do we care about ESG and from the cyber world? Because other people do, right? There's hacktivists that want to attack specific companies because, you know, of what they do. And if you're doing business with one of them, you want to know who those businesses are that maybe have these lower scores in the ESG world, because they're going to be a target for, you know, for your vendors. I worked for a natural gas utility that did fracking at one point in my career. You can bet that they probably didn't have the greatest ESG score if you're going to measure it today. And you can bet that they also got sued a lot, and they also had a lot of attacks against them because people didn't like what they did. So I think that's why we need to care of it from a cyber perspective about ESG.
And I got to assume this is an issue that Levi's, ran into because of manufacturing of jeans outside of the country. There were some political elements to that as well. And so you kind of had to play a gentle balance all the time. Yes, Steve? And this is not in your control, but it was something that you had to be aware of. Should you be operating in a country that others were not happy with, there might be some blowback. Yes?
Yep. And I'll give you specific examples. ESG was huge at Levi's, and it's still huge at Levi's because it has to do with we want everybody to buy the jeans. So when we looked at environmental, it was, do we have good practices for when we buy the cotton and manufacture the jeans? Because it is very water intensive and it uses dyes. So they did a lot of work to remove the use of water to have friendly dyes. That's an example where a whole lot of people, if they're not happy, aren't going to buy the jeans, right? Not cyber directly, but it's a supply chain, and it could result in an attack, right? A social hacktivist attack. If you look at social, right? That's fair
Can
wage.
I pause? Did you guys have social hacktivist attacks?
Did we?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
So
And
this was a real thing.
nothing I'm talking about here is theoretical. Okay. This
Okay.
is, these eyes have been through the wars. And so that would happen. Okay. When you went to social, that's fair wage. Do we do fair wage, right? Around the world, to your point, which was, are we hiring people and paying them fair wage? Because a lot of people care about that. And if we're not, then they're not going to buy our jeans. Okay. The result of that can be bad. Another one around social was gun control. Take a position on gun control. That's a big social issue. Well, that has direct hacktivist impact. And that was something we had to struggle with. And that had cyber security written all over it because we were the ones that could pick up when the threats were coming in and had to do something about it. Okay. And then when you get to governance, the key here for me is diversity, right? Can we demonstrate that our company takes diversity in its truest sense, that we have fair diversity of all the different ways you can measure it inside of our company so that we are doing the right thing from a governance perspective? Those are three examples that have cybersecurity indirect consequence, but that's why ESG for us was so important and why we had to look at it and measure it. And I had to be prepared to respond to effectively the social attacks in any of those circumstances. And so different types of directed attack.
All right, John, I want to give you an opportunity to explain where Risk Recon's getting involved in exactly what we're talking about and sort of the examples that Steve just proposed there. You guys are keeping an eye on this behavior. Like, I guess correct me if I'm wrong, you work with a client to try to understand, who the third parties are and then try to, I guess, create a map. Explain in terms of what are all the essentially ESG variables that are happening, or the ones that they care about, I guess. Explain.
So from an ESG standpoint, we do have a partner that we work with that will be bringing this data in on top of the cyber data that we've always gathered for our now, I think, 25 million companies that we refresh on every 10-day basis. So we're pulling those scores in because, to Steve's point, all that stuff does matter. It's other factors that you take into account with that vendor, along with things like financial risk and geopolitical risk. That's all the stuff that, as cyber people, we really need to start thinking about, and that's why we're bringing this sorts of data into the process, and not just making it a completely cyber focus.
By the way, I want to remind everybody that the poll is live of the bad ideas, so I need everybody to vote. Dwayne Grand wants everybody to vote early and often. I do want you to vote early. I would like you to vote often, and you can do that if you log into Crowdcast multiple times, but one user just can't vote often. I would love it if that could be the case, but that's not possible. So please vote, and I don't know if we have good ideas. Aaron, tell me in the back channel if we have any good ideas that have come in. Please give us your good ideas on managing third-party risk and getting some insight. And if you have not clicked and registered for our Super Cyber Friday that's going to happen in another month, I know it's a ways off, but please register now, and you will know if or you'll be automatically registered to win one of these awesome CISO Series fleeces. All right. With that said, let's go to, do we have any new questions in here? No, we don't. Please. Let's go to the next question I have. All right. All right. Let's talk about visibility and opaqueness. And I'm going to start with you, Jonathan, on this. And that is, what is easy to see and what is really difficult to see in terms of, and I know this is an extremely vague question, but take it from the, I want to know this, you hear from a client, and talk about like, oh, this is easy for us to do. This gets more, and then this now trends down to a more difficult thing to be able to be, what's visible to us.
So I'll tackle it from the standpoint of how you would typically assess a vendor, right? So obviously we know security questionnaires. Everybody in this room is, if they've done third-party risk, they've probably done security questionnaires. So the easy stuff there is the stuff that you're going to ask about that everybody asks about, but that's not always the information that you want. And the easy stuff to get is the stuff that we can see from the outside, right? Every CISO I've ever talked to wants to know the outside and the inside. They say, give me that, magic, open the kimono formula and tell me everything I want to know about this vendor. But I mean, Steve, you were a CISO. Would you ever let anybody see inside the kimono? Probably not, right? And not share it on the outside. Nobody's going to want to. So the easy stuff to see is what we can see from the outside. And people will refute that and say, hey, outside looking in isn't a viable means of assessing the posture of a vendor. I like to use the analogy of like a house. If I'm driving down the street and I see a house and it's got, a burnt out 74 El Camino in the driveway, the grass is overgrown, the windows are broken, shutters are hanging off, there's a big hole in the roof. Chances are the inside of the house is going to look like garbage too. Right. So that's what we can do in a cyber standpoint. We can look at the outside and make a pretty good determination. Sometimes we're wrong. Just like in the case of houses, sometimes you're wrong. Sometimes it is a drug dealer who wants to make his house look really bad and the inside looks like the Taj Mahal, right? So I think looking from the outside in, that's the easy stuff we can get. That's the easy level of visibility we can get into organizations. And we start talking about fourth party, fifth party, sixth party, you don't have any contractual, they have no contractual obligation to answer a security questionnaire or provide you with a SOC 2 or a high trust. If you have tools in place that can look from the outside in, you don't need to get permission. You can point the tools at them and get some sort of assessment on that vendor. Even if it's just an outside looking in, it's better than what we would typically get, which is nothing at all.
All right. I want to throw in this question that I saw Dutch asked, and I'm going to start with you, Steve, on this. What's the most frequent but solvable mistake that enterprises make upon assessing and acting upon risk? Well, specifically, we'll talk third-party risk here.
Believing the answers.
Oh, really?
That's a great answer, Steve.
And the reason why, and Dutch knows this too, and so that's why when I saw the question, I go, here's the big thing. I can send you a question, okay? I don't know if you're the secretary. I don't know if you're the CISO. I don't know if you're a contractor that they hired to answer the questions. And what happens here is there's no trust. There is no federated trust from me knowing that the person answered the question is somebody that I can actually believe. So vendor security assessments as a whole are effectively useless because there's no trust. So why bother? They can answer whatever they want. My view, and I agree, which is so knowing that asking questions is the wrong thing to do. The right thing to do, and what I wanted to do is I said, show me your SOC 2 Type 2. What I said was, show me something that was independently audited that gave me a baseline to know you at least had some security controls that somebody looked at and was willing to sign off on. Not that they were all the security controls, not that they were great security controls, but just that there was some way that I could get an independent analysis, right, through a third-party broker that you are trying to do the right thing. And I said, that is as good as it gets. And that's what I was joking about. And then I went to my lawyer and I said, let's go write some terms and conditions into the contract that says, if there's then violation, there's whatever the contractual remediation is, because that is all I can do. I don't know if that's a good answer or a bad answer, but that was like the practical answer for me of the whole thing's bullshit.
Part of the questionnaire is, can you validate it? Like, Okay,
Right.
can you answer this and can
If
you
you can't-
validate it? Yes.
If you can't validate it, it's a glorified attestation, right?
Mhm.
So that's the thing. And SOC 2s, I have opinions both ways on them. It kind of depends on the scope, because I've seen some where I've been a part of them where they scope it out and okay, it's just this one system. You know, there's data all over the place, but this is all that we're looking at, and so that's important. But no, I agree, Steve. I give a talk all the time that I talk about this as a Zoom virtual background, right?
Mhm.
The security questionnaire is there's the perception of reality that I want you to believe. And if I can't turn off that background and see what's going on and knowing what's going on behind me, I don't really know if it's true or not, right? So sometimes you turn off the background and it's just a background. It's my basement in Buffalo, New York. Sometimes you turn off that background and there's two kids trying to kill each other and all sorts of stuff, chaos going on that you're trying to hide from,
Right.
from the person who sent in the questionnaire to. So, yeah.
So
right.
there's what I want to do and what I can do.
Right.
Right. And that's what we're getting at, which is when you go to your executive team, this may be what they want you to do, is to accept all that risk. And you use VSAs and everything else. But you know that what you just did was you signed your life away because it's not actually defendable. So that's why I say is that's what you want to do. Go back and tell them what you can do. And that's what I just said was this is all I can do. And now you're going to have to accept all that risk or find other ways to transfer the risk because that's all I can do for you. And as a businessman, right, as us as CISOs, that is a fair thing to tell the executive team and then have that hard conversation because we don't want them to believe that we can do magic. And there's just too much at risk. Who has your back now where cybersecurity is becoming so important and so accountable, and our ability to do anything about it is actually declining, not improving over time, and will for some number of years.
All right. We have a new game to play.
Okay, that was too serious. Sorry, team.
It's all right.
It's time to play a brand new game.
All right, Jonathan, Steve, here it is, Fantasy CISO. What's going to happen? I'm not going to tell you what it is. You see there's a tab. Oh, you can't see it because our heads are blocking it. But here are 10 different controls. All right. And Jonathan, you get to pick 4 of these. Steve, you only get to pick 2, but we're going to go with Jonathan going first. And
he
then
gets to go first and pick 4. I get to pick 2, and I have to win. All right, I like.
I have
how
to.
this works.
You might win. It'll
I feel
be
like
up
we're
to our
talking
audience.
about risk in front of the board of
here.
directors. You know what I mean? They get to ask me 4 questions, and I only get 2 answers. Oh, wait a minute. Okay.
It's because you blew the previous game, to Steve. All right, Jonathan. You get to pick. Pick any of these controls, and keep in mind you don't know what the attack is. You're going to have an attack, and then the audience is going to vote whose controls are set in place better to deal with that attack. So, pick your first control. Which would you like?
I'm going to go with incident response.
Incident response management. Okay. Whoops. Oh, here I'm not on the right thing here. Incident response management. Jonathan. All right, you got that. Now, Steve, you get to pick one.
I only want one. Access control management.
Access. That's all you want. Hold
That's
it.
all I
I'm coming back to you.
That's all I want. I will give him mine.
No, Steve. You
Okay.
get to pick another. Jonathan, pick one.
Email and web browser protection.
Email and web browser protection. All right. Whoops. That's what. Here we go. My cursor. Here we go. Jonathan. Email and web browser, and then Steve. One more for you. Pick it.
Controlled use of admin privileges.
Controlled use of admin privileges. All right.
For everybody out there, you're going to see.
All right.
I think it's
And
obvious.
then Jonathan, you get to pick 2 more.
2 more. Geez, I'm going with that. I'll go with security awareness training. I'm thinking it's trying to keep my people.
Where is there's security awareness training. Okay, security awareness, and you get 1 more.
Data recovery capabilities.
Okay, now I'm going to reveal the attack, and Aaron, I want you to put the poll up for Jonathan and Steve, and the audience. I'm going to give you guys all 30 seconds to vote, so please vote quickly. You have 30 seconds to vote. Who is able to protect this attack better given the controls they have in place? Ready? And here's the attack. It is an adversary has gained access to your EDR product. All right. Jonathan has data recovery capabilities, a security awareness and skills training, instant response management, email and web browser protection. Nobody, by the way, picked EDR. I should point that out. And Steve has access control management and controlled use of administrative privileges. Who is going to win? We have the poll. It is live. Is it? Did you make it at the top? Oh, can you make it at the top? Move it to the top, the poll, so people can see it. More
John
easily.
Procap knows exactly what I'm doing. He's
Okay.
He nailed
So
it. He
please
knows
vote.
exactly.
You have. I'm going to count this. Andrew, let's put a timer on this for the next time we play the game, so we can have a timer on it. But we just here. I'm watching the timer right now. I'm giving everyone 20 seconds. When it hits 36 minutes, we'll close this out. Steve is winning right now with only 10 votes, 11. Oh my God. 13. 4. Oh my God. 8 more seconds. 7 more seconds. 6, 5, 4. Wait. 3. Oh, it looks like Steve's going to win this. And time is up.
I got
Steve
some unofficial
wins
votes in the chat, I think.
by a 2-1 margin here. By the way, there are a lot more people on than have voted. All right. Congratulations, Steve, for winning Fantasy
Way to go,
Steve. So
Steve.
let me show you your prize. You did get to win a prize here. And you get to win. Here it is. A 1970 Chevrolet El Camino. Congratulations.
There you go.
There you go. You win.
And we're all going to go. Party's on me, man. I'll fill it. We're going to find it, and that's it. We're parking,
All right.
and that's it. So I do want to say, I winning 2-1. Okay, joking aside, that was huge. So for everybody in the audience, okay, identity and access management is the core. What everybody was really telling me was, if I know who has access to what, I can stop it. And that was awesome, right? That was why I was saying I'm going all in on the core, because if you get that absolutely right, absolutely nothing wrong can happen. So I really appreciate folks that's what I said, is for folks that knew what I was trying to do here. That was awesome.
There is some question from David Peach. Looks like he said the question says who had the worst environment.
Well, I think that's.
I'm not going there because I have
Anyways,
to make sure that my sponsor's happy. Okay. No.
We're working. By the way, we'd love to hear from the audience. We sort of thanks to Aaron, our producer, who sort of actually introduced this concept to us initially. We want to work this whole idea of the fantasy CISO a little bit more. I think there's a lot of different directions we can go with it, but that's our initial take at it. If anyone has some ideas, we're all ears on that. All right. We still have our best bad idea poll, of which we're going to play that. Actually, we're going to play the Department of Yes in just a few minutes. So please get your votes in for the bad ideas. Let's get one more question in. Oh, a lot of questions have come in. I'm sorry. While we're waiting here. Okay. So that we dealt with that question. This is an interesting question. Kevin Hackinson asked, and maybe this exists or not. You tell me, Jonathan. Can you join a business consortium to collaborate on learning about third and fourth party risk for a vendor, or is that collusion another risk related to sharing insider info?
So, and this is not a canned or a planned answer. You actually can. I actually founded a nonprofit called the Third Party Risk Association, which I'm no longer a part of. So, not getting any benefit from it, but there is a professional association out there. They do meetings all the time. It's a couple hundred members at least, from well over probably close to 200 international organizations now.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the ISACs. There's all those sorts of stuff. I see that just was popped up in the chat from Kerwin.
Yeah,
there's a lot of groups out there. There's various ISACs depending on your, the field that you're in. There's the Third Party Risk Association, which is very specific to just third party risk. Obviously, otherwise the name would be kind of, misleading. And then shared assessments and all those sorts of stuff also have their other groups. There's a bunch of other vendors out there that have their own communities and stuff. So yeah, it's not, security is all about rising tide raises all ships, right?
Right.
At the end of the day, we're all in it together. I've been in so many rooms where the business people don't want you to talk, and you put the security guys together and they're like, this is stupid. Like, we got to protect, we're fighting the same battle.
We've talked about, Steve, your line that you've said many times before, because you have relationships with other major retailers, and you say, and you can add to this, if you have an incident, my team is your team, right?
Absolutely. There are no secrets in the security community. And the reason why I say that is In security, we have one common enemy. And we as a village are trying to protect the children, which are all of our companies.
Mhm.
And we understand that. And we're unique from that perspective because we just do it. And every company's leadership effectively understands that. So we don't compete, even though we do compete, like, Levi's and Gap, but not at that level. And so I think we need to take advantage of that because it's the only way we can survive is to share. And when we position it against the common enemy, it's hard for anybody to argue with that logic.
All right, we get a call.
Uh-oh.
Hello, welcome to the Department of Yes, where no request is ever rejected.
So some substantially good bad ideas have come in, and this first one comes in from, I believe, Kevin. Is this one from? Yes, Kevin. Hold on, wait. Is this? Yeah, Kevin Hackinson, who has been a previous winner before. And I will start with you, John. You know how this game plays. Tell us why you want to do it. Rely solely on third-party risk advice from ChatGPT prompts. So what ChatGPT tells you. I actually don't think this is such a horrible idea, to tell you the honest truth.
So ChatGPT is a chatbot, I'm guessing, right?
It's it's the one it's gotten all the rage in the past couple of weeks, which is it's become quite amazingly creative and accurate, is what's kind of throwing people, because you can tell ChatGPT things like, write me a poem about third-party risk, and it will literally write a poem about third-party risk. It's bizarre.
Like, I guess we know that those sorts of technologies never go wrong, right? They never become sentient or suddenly become, anti-Semitic
Well,
and
we
racist
know
and all
that
sorts of
that's
stuff.
not
Right?
true.
So you
I'm
can.
giving you
I would say the answer is you can always rely on those chatbots to be honest and give you great advice.
Oh, come on. We know you're lying here. No. We know that thing. Why do we want to do this, Steve?
Because it'll make it easier for China to break in.
Why do you want China to break in? What is wrong with both of you?
So here's the logic, which is, well, I'm going to use ChatGPT because everybody reads it. And so if they read it, then I know how they're going to attack me and I can put my defense.
All right. Well, now that's going to be the answer to the next one. So you might, I'm going to let you answer this next one. And this one comes from Dwayne Grand, who says, go onto the dark web and challenge hackers to attack your third-party vendors. See which ones survive to gauge their security. Not such a bad idea. What do you think of that, Steve? This, though, rises in conflict that we're all on the same team, though. I should point that out.
So how am I supposed to answer that?
You're supposed to answer why you want to actually deploy it.
Why I want to deploy it?
Why you actually want to do this. All right, I'm going to go in the dark web.
It's great because the alternative is to go to the government and transfer risk to them to manage it for me.
Okay, I'll give you that. Yes! Jonathan, why do you want to do this?
I'd say it's going to save us some resources. It's effective outsourcing.
Yes. Hooray! I agree, 100%. All right, you guys redeemed yourself on the second one. Congrats to Kevin Hackinson and Dwayne Graham for those great ones. And we only have 2 of 10% better tips on managing risk. I guess you guys can have some better ideas on managing risk, but let's throw up that poll right now if we can. Do we have on the 2 or 2? No, I take that back. We have 4 ideas, and you guys have been voting already. All right, so please vote on that. Brian Colt offers the advice: include third-party services and vendors in your threat modeling, which is what we were talking about earlier. Like, do you think creatively about what the heck could happen? Right. I want to remind everybody that the link at the bottom of the screen is to register for the next Super Cyber Friday, which isn't going to be for an entire month, more than that. So please register for that. Remember, if you register early, you're automatically entered in the raffle to win an awesome CISO Series jacket, and we want you to win as well. And stick around for our meetup, which we're going to do in, what time we got? It was 16 minutes from now. All right. We have some more questions. Do we have that one? I don't think. Oh, okay. Okay. This is a good one, and I'm going to throw this one to you, John. This one comes from Don. I don't know Don's last name, which Don this is. But do you have any recommendations for risk scenario training simulations? So looking for some practical training scenarios. So the idea is I have to keep an eye on this, but like, how do I guess this may go into threat modeling too, for that matter. But I got to assume that when you're working with a client, they also kind of want to either do tabletop exercises, like, all right, if this happens. So, kind of, what do you advise at the kind of that next stage of, all right, we're tracking this, but let's see how well you're dealing with this.
Well, I think if you, for those vendors, especially the ones that you consider critical, the ones that maybe hold your crown jewels or critical service, I think we got to be involved in the tabletop exercises, involve them in everything that you're doing, and have incident response plans that are in place for a vendor issue or something like that, because it's not always the same sort of scenario when we control what's going on versus when it's happening at a vendor. Oftentimes, and Steve will probably tell you, I'm sure you've had this issue where when there's a breach at a vendor, you sit and wait because legal on both sides is negotiating when they're going to tell you stuff and when you're going to get access to your sort of stuff. So get involved, build those relationships early, get them involved in your testing and be a part of their testing. So you build those connections. When something does happen, you're ready to go.
Okay.
So, I'm going to add on to this. This is an asset management problem, right? This is all of a sudden a third-party risk and fourth-party risk is an asset management problem. How well have you built out an appreciation for understanding all of the third and fourth parties that you use? Mm-hmm. That's an asset management problem. And if you actually go down that path, we did, then you monitor. And when you realize that there's been an indicator of compromise and you realize where it is in your supply chain, mm-hmm. Right? Technically, at that point, my obligation is to cut all communications with any infrastructure system that's communicating with them. I've got to isolate them from my business infrastructure. What's the impact of the supply chain when you do that? That is now how we start to get very proactive around mm-hmm. understanding what that means and being able to show the executive team, for example, some of the decisions they're making on fourth-party vendors may have huge impact and high likelihood of it going down. So that what you're now doing is you are influence their business decision process and how they're establishing a supply chain, because they're now taking cybersecurity risk into account because they see the business impact.
Steve, one of the issues that I think is difficult there too is, when you're talking fourth parties and you're talking the hosting providers, the Amazons of the world, those are a little bit easier. Think about fourth parties that nobody even knows about, right? If you don't have that good visibility into your third parties, do you know if maybe some of your critical third-party providers are relying on one common fourth-party provider, right? And it may not be the Amazons of the world. Maybe they, could do anything. It could be a pencil printer or something, right? Maybe that's a key requirement for you. And if you don't have that level of visibility, you're kind of flying blind, right? You don't know what you don't know. And one of those, at some point, something's going to happen at that fourth party, and suddenly a whole bunch of your third parties are out of the water, and you have a much bigger problem than you thought about than just that one issue with the third party.
So where I was going with asset management problem is your firewalls, right? Your other defensive controls all of a sudden have all kinds of information around sites that you're communicating with when you're like, what the heck am I doing talking to GoDaddy? And the answer is one of your third parties is using GoDaddy certificates for something they're doing on the back end. That's why I said it's an asset management problem. If you go look at all those assets and start to correlate it, you're going to start to see what's happening out there. And the first challenge always is visibility, because with visibility, then comes an appreciation of potential business risk. Because what you're highlighting is the stuff that you don't have control over, but you have impact on. And so that's why I said, which was, wow, what an interesting way to think about third-party and fourth-party risk is it's an asset management problem where you have to bring visibility to the problem first. So attack it that way rather than trying to do VSAs and everything else, which is get out of the box, look at it to be able to kind of get some visibility for the executive team so that they see what you're doing to try to protect them. But at the same time, you're showing that you only have 30% visibility and I can only protect 5% of that. That's a business risk conversation where they can't hold you accountable because you're showing them that you're doing your job, but you're really showing them that you actually have the better interest of the company because you have more visibility than any other executive in the company to the total risk profile. You become invaluable, but that also gives you the opportunity to determine what insurance policies you can actually play.
All right. I want to, on that said, I want to, hold it. Jeff Reich has this 10% tip here, and it's based, it's essentially, it's a nice tag to what you're saying right here. And he says, right into every, and what I'd like to know is, have you ever done this? Would anyone willingly do this? I don't know. He says, right into every agreement, full indemnification for every risk that is stated as controlled, yet is realized. Have you done this? You're nodding your head, yes? Steve?
So
I don't know. Can you do this? I have no idea.
So here's how you...
John's nodding his head.
I don't
Good
think
luck.
so. Good luck.
Here's how I tried to get away with it. Within the constraints of what I could do, right? And this is what I kept getting was I sat down with the legal team and the contract team, and I said, we want to write a security addendum into every contract.
Mm-hmm.
And the security addendum had a standard set of expectations of being able to state and follow security policies, expectations for auditing, expectations for remediation, expectations for notification. Okay. That's what I did.
Mm-hmm.
And then I left it and I said, all right, hey, business, you want to do business with company XYZ? Here's the addendum. If there were any red lines to that addendum and the business accepted it, they just accepted all that risk because I was making clear the visibility that we required. And if they wanted to take that responsibility, that's fine. So it wasn't that I solved it. It was that I was very clear about how I could transfer that responsibility as soon as they started redlining.
All right.
And that's how I got around it.
Go ahead. Yes, were you about to say?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think, for someone like Steve, you should never own the risk anyways. It's not really your risk to
Right.
transfer.
And we all know this,
right?
yeah.
Right. But I've seen enough contracts that have been, I put my addendum out there, even if the addendum doesn't get redlined, that we have the controls in place, but then, the liability and everything is whittled down to almost nothing. So in the end, even if they don't comply, it really is no skin off anyone's back and you're really not protected. That's the challenge I think we face, because oftentimes the business wants to do business with the vendor and they're going to work against you because they're like, hey, I really want to work with this guy working out of the 74 El Camino. I don't care that if you tell me that, it's not secure.
Have you ever worked with somebody who worked out of their Camino?
No, but for whatever reason, it's in my mind. I don't know why.
It's in your, obviously it is.
It is.
Somebody had a dream.
I've been reading the chat too much.
I
keep seeing everything's about El Caminos in there, so I'm sticking.
There you go.
I want somebody working out of a 67 Chevy.
There you
67 Shelby. That's
All right.
the one I want.
Hey, everybody, would you click the link at the bottom of the screen to register for our next Super Cyber Friday that's going to happen in 1 month? Because that's going to change in a moment. So please click on it right now. By the way, I didn't mention that if you click on it, it doesn't take you out of this discussion at all whatsoever. You'll still be in it. All right. I'm going to come back to you. We're going to wrap up this show, and I'm going to have final questions for you. But let me just remind you that our next show is January 20th, 2023. That's going to change in just a moment. So you got just a moment right now to click that darn thing. An hour of critical thinking of how intelligent automation can achieve more without actually doing more. And remember, if you register early, you're entered in a raffle to win a CISO Series jacket. So do that. Hey, huge thanks to our sponsor again, the Venn Diagram, a.k.a. MasterCard. We appreciate you supporting the CISO Series. Back again, they sponsored us a ton back in 2021. They're back again, doing a ton of sponsorships in 2022. Thanks again, MasterCard and Risk Recon. Hey, starting in more like 97 minutes from now, 3:30 p.m. Eastern and 12:30 p.m. Pacific, it's our Cybersecurity Headlines Week in Review with Jeremy Mbalabala. What an awesome last name. He's also a great interview. I interviewed him before for another show. He's a CISO for Hub International. That is actually on the CISO Series YouTube channel. So just go to our youtube.com/CISO Series at 3:30. It starts sharp at that time as well. Hey, stick around for our meetup. Aaron, would you change the link at the bottom of the screen to our meetup? There it is. You can click on that now and get yourself locked in and loaded into that. We will be there as soon as this show ends, which will be in about 6 minutes as well. Tell your friends to join us. We do this not every Friday, but every available Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific. The schedule, if you go to CISOseries.com, there's an events tab or an events link, and you can see all the virtual and in-person events that we're having. Hey, do you want to sponsor a Super Cyber Friday? Guess what? Just email me at david@csoseries.com. I think we have one left in January. If you want, I think it's January 27th. We have that one available. So jump on it. And we got a bunch in February that are loaded. I think we got about 3 or 4 already scheduled for 2023. And that's it. All right. With that being said, we have, how much time we have? We have about 5 minutes. I'm going to ask one question and then we'll do wrap up. Okay. This is my big thing about people shifting out. GDPR was kind of the tectonic shift for a lot of people in terms of, all right, well, we need to get things going. And the question earlier you had, Jonathan, of do you have somebody overseeing this? Because in GDPR and a lot of other regulations, you must have somebody overseeing this. So since it covered all of your businesses realized they just had to adopt, where are we seeing the next shift that's going to affect all or at least a good portion of businesses? What do you think, Jonathan?
I thought it was going to be the CMMC, but that's kind of dragged on a little bit.
Okay.
That had momentum to be the tectonic one, at least in the States. Probably maybe DORA coming out of Europe. DORA might be the next one that is the tectonic shift, which is still very, very similar.
Explain DORA to everybody.
It's a Digital Operational Resilience Act, I think is the full acronym. Basically defending against cyber attacks and making sure that you're digitally resilient.
So essentially it's a series of regulations you must have in place.
Yeah, another series of regulations. Yeah, we're getting a lot of questions coming in from that from European customers and that sort of stuff. So I think off the top of my head, those
are there very public fines attached to them?
I want to say yes. I'm not actually sure.
Is there private? Let me ask you: is there privacy attached to DORA as well?
I don't believe so. I think DORA is strictly cybersecurity.
I think it's because the privacy was attached to GDPR and there was little to no privacy in place. I think people went from 0 to not 100, but 0 to 50 from GDPR because there were others. They had nothing.
It's people's data, right?
Yeah. Steve, what do you think is the next shift? And then we got to wrap this sucker up.
Okay. So my 2 cents is the next shift isn't in the continued issuance of policy. Mm-hmm. It's actually when it all goes to court, because a lot of the policies that have been written from a business perspective are not enforceable. We got to do business. And so I think the big tectonic shift is you're going to see some rollback of a lot of these philosophical policies as to what the business can practically accept. And so I'd say over the next 3 to 5 years, as the businesses start to push back on some of these idealistic policies that just aren't able to be implemented, that's going to be the big tectonic shift now as we find the middle ground.
Okay. I like it. All right. With that said, I'm going to give you each essentially 1 minute less, 45 seconds to wrap it up. Jonathan, unfortunately, will not be able to join us for a meetup later, even though I'll be there, Steve will be there, and everyone else. You have a kid's birthday party to go to. Totally understand. But if you want to connect with Jonathan, and I understand you're hiring over at Risk Recon, drop your LinkedIn there. Oh, boom, perfect. So if you want to connect with John, click that. Any last thoughts on this or anything last you want to say about Risk Recon?
Last thoughts, I'd say just get creative. I just saw a tail walk by Steve's face.
Yes.
As security people, we have access to a ton of data, especially in the third-party world. There's a lot of data that you can bring value to your organization outside of just telling who's secure, who's not secure. I used to forecast hurricanes to my business unit using data out of a continuous monitoring tool. So get creative, bring value, keep doing what you're doing.
I like it. All right. Steve, any last thoughts from you as well?
Sure. One, Finn will be joining us. So if everybody knows, here's Finn. She has been behaving, but she finally said, you're spending too much time on the phone. You got to pet me. Mm-hmm. So meet Finn. And two, what I would say is the conversation here was hacking non-traditional cyber risk. Mm-hmm. And I would say the goal here is get out of the box. Okay. Non-traditional cyber risk is becoming the majority of our problem. Understand all the different ways that what we never would have considered a risk are. So don't have a blind side. That's what we were talking about today with the ESG and some of the things we were talking about is always be talking to each other and looking at the business cases and understanding where the business is either explicitly or implicitly putting you inside the box to accept more risk and push back.
Okay. Great. Literally seconds left. Let me just do a quick thank you for everybody. Thank you, Steve Zalewski. Thank you, John Arad at Risk Recon and MasterCard. Greatly appreciate it, everybody. Please, let me thank to my producers, Aaron and Andrew, who've done an awesome job of all of 2022, and to our community. We love the fact that you keep coming back again and again and again to participate in this, and we're going to try to make this more fun. And please give us feedback. In fact, I'll be at the chat. If you click the darn button at the bottom of the screen, you can give me your feedback, because I'd love to hear your feedback. I take constructive